I'm not doubting his ability to maintain the Akademy over the next few years or whatever, but pretty disastrous start. Because
what happened? What do you mean
Lil Boom got exposed as a redacted, which crazy. Troy Ave just got locked up. I don't know how long that's for. And then like he had the comment section podcast with like 4 random dudes that he talks to on Discord, and that doesn't really seem like it's panned out the way that it was supposed to. So I feel like he feels like now he's kind of starting from scratch, unless Troy Ave gets out soon, which I don't know how many years he's expecting to go down for.
I got to say something. You might say I'm messy.
Okay.
Flakko appeared on Akademiks podcast. Thoughts on that?
I saw a few little clips. When I saw the 5-hour timestamp, I was like, okay, I don't got time for this. How did you feel about it?
No, I thought it was great. I thought Flakko was in his bag. I thought, like, man, to see the growth of him. But what I thought was, like, it seemed like he was perfect for the Academy, and there's people making those types of conversations, even with, this might be messy, but Flakko saying that he doesn't make 5 figures at No Jumper. I was like, that's interesting.
I think he said he didn't make 6 figures.
Oh, 6 figures
at No Jumper.
My bad. Yeah, that would have been bad. 6 figures. That's exactly what he said. So you did watch that part.
That part got quoted to me, or at least sent to me. Yeah.
Okay, so it was interesting. It was like, and people seem like Flakko and Act 2 peas in a pod, right?
Are they too similar?
I think it'll be like Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons, where it's like maybe they're similar, but they're still different. And I feel like those guys would be perfect together. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a possibility that he could be better utilized over there. I don't know. If I actually made him a formal offer, then I guess we would have to really take a look at the numbers and say, like, is it worth it? I don't know. I mean, I'm not above having that sort of conversation. I do think it's kind of weird because I feel like he could get a lot of different hosts. Like, he does really good numbers with fucking Ant Glizzy.
Okay.
Why doesn't he start a podcast with him? I feel like when he said that he gave Troy Ave $100K, I was like, you should have gave Ant Glizzy $100K.
It's funny to see your podcast mind go.
Well, I mean, he's done podcasts with a bunch of people that have done very, very well. It just seems to me like you should probably before I would hire a Troy Ave, because Wack was trying to pitch me on the Troy Ave show.
Wow.
On here and shit, like during the episodes of the Adam and Wack show, or maybe it was off camera, but I think it was on camera as well. He would be like, you need to do this deal with Troy Ave. And my thing is, number one, he's in New York. I'm over here. So it's like, if anyone is going to be successful on the No Jumper podcast, it's going to have to be because they mesh so well with me and the other hosts that they kind of just become part of it. And it's just, we're not going to have a successful show that's on the East Coast that none of us are on. Like, now, maybe if it was already an existing popular show and you put it on the No Jumper channel, maybe you would see a bit of a boost, especially if we're promoting it. But, generally, the only success that I've ever been able to have was by actually like incorporating people into my world. And if I feel like by taking the Troy Ave thing and putting it on a much smaller channel, I mean, I don't know how that was going to really ever work out.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't work out for other reasons, but maybe it seemed like I'd like Troy Ave's show. It did kind of do good. I like his music too. So
really,
a lot of people make fun of me for that.
You're so Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just didn't, like, when I was looking at the numbers and I watched a few clips, I don't know. I mean, like, Troy Ave is somebody who can go do an interview with me or Ak or whoever and do really well. Really well being like, 200, 300, maybe 400,000 views. But I don't know, like, it doesn't feel like people want to hear him on a daily basis.
I do. I could see that, just because, not that it's kind of his persona, like arrogant, and maybe sometimes lacks a little substance, like where there's not deep conversations happening, where Joe is like deep conversations, capable of that. I can see that with Troy. Yeah.
Deep conversations ultimately are what it all comes back to, because that's one thing I've kind of realized is that the value of a viral moment is so much less now, because that viral moment will be quickly farmed out to TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, etc. And it's just like, who's going to go watch a 2-hour podcast to see the one 30-second moment where people nearly came to blows or whatever the fuck it is. It's like, meanwhile, on the other side of things, if you have a Lex Friedman podcast that's 4 hours, I mean, good luck putting that on TikTok. You know, you might be able to find some little clips, but it's something that is not meant to be consumed in short form. It's meant to be consumed long term or long form. So that works. I feel like anyone who's really like overemphasizing the viral moments is kind of not doing themselves any favors. And I say that with the red pill space in mind, that the girls walking out of the podcast, the TikToks might go nuts, but is anyone really like going crazy tuning into the full length VOD for that? I don't know.
Are you connecting to people with that?
Yeah, it feels like all those gimmicks, you know, it's like the same thing that SoundCloud rap went through, where for a period of time people were very, very impressed with a young guy with pink hair and face tattoos screaming at random passerbys or having a gun sticking out of his pants or whatever. And all these gimmicks were really hitting for a period of time. And then at a certain point, it just wears off. And now we're kind of in like peak disillusionment with people and rappers, because it's just people haven't really found something interesting enough for them to latch onto aside from talent and actual good music, which is the hardest thing to fake, right?
Yeah, it's always like you can't engineer that. But yeah, this all started stemming from the sit down you had with Joe back in 2022, and I found it just interesting, like some of the arguments that were being made that didn't really stand up to what I was listening to.
Right, and even when I talked to Ak about that original argument on the podcast, he just said like, good job on standing up to these dudes busting out these 2015 ass arguments. I think it was what he said, which I agreed with that take in the sense that I think that those guys could have won that argument.
How?
They would have had to do some fucking research and find some find some killer examples of me asking messy questions, and find a messy question that I asked where the guy got shot a month later. You know, call me out on some shit like that. But it was just so weak. It was so badly put together. And I saw the arrogance of Joe Budden in that moment, because I'm like, you could have easily put in the necessary time to come to this conversation prepared, but instead you thought that your natural charisma was going to be enough to carry you, and it didn't work out.
It was funny. There was one point where he's referencing your Kevin Samuels video, and he says, check the comments. I bet you there's going to be people. And then the comment is like, I love Kevin Samuels. This means so much. It was like completely backfired.
Because he was telling me, they're like, oh, Kevin Samuels is so controversial. And I'm like, with who? Because yeah, that is controversial to your audience because you got mad grown ass black women watching your podcast. Guess what? I don't have that problem. All mine's is fucking teenage boys. I don't have to think about that. You know, and like the Kevin Samuels fans are coming in and they're just, I'm not hearing from the dissident voices in that situation. And, you know, obviously I would like to have that fan base as well. Doesn't seem terribly likely. Maybe we should hire some female talent at some point, but very hard to find women that resonate with the audience as podcast hosts.
Especially a 90% male audience. Like,
especially that, yeah.
Do you feel like sometimes, because I think this is my issues that with the men on the couch, the other men on the couch, is they're very critical of content creators in a way, like, and then they don't have to make those choices, right? So they'll be like, this is mad clickbaity. Why would you do this? And I'm like, but you are just showing up to do a job. And this is, I think, what the issue was with Warrior Mo and Ak. Like, Ish and Ice were passing all this judgment on you, but they don't necessarily ever have to make content on their own, and they can kind of rely on Joe to make all those choices.